now for a review of what's making the newspaper headlines this morning. Let's bring in Arise analyst Constance Ikoku. Good morning, Dr. Constance.
Good morning, Charles. Good morning. How was your weekend?
Yeah, I mean, we were all there at Mr. B's birthday bash.
I know. You know, when we were on the dance floor, you know, there was like, Dr. Constance, you can dance. I'm like, listen. You
Dr. Constance, professional by day, dance floor shaker.
I was like, do not mess with me on the dance floor.
Absolutely.
Of course, I can dance.
That was really great to see. Good morning, Dr. Constance.
Good morning.
We had a good time. And this one, you disappeared. What happened?
I was there, and then I wasn't there, then I was there.
Lady of
this
mystery.
one was visible and invisible, visible and then invisible again.
All at the same time.
It was such a nice time. And happy birthday once again to Mr. Bayo Owashama. He's such a cool, calm, collected boss, and you know, we have a great time with him in the newsroom.
Very
okay, now we have to go to the newspaper review. To look at the papers with us this morning, we have Dr. Iyubosa Owogarian. He is the editor, Nation's Capital of This Day newspaper. We'll begin, hello there and welcome to the program. We'll begin with this day. NECA man, Saraki fought customs 4% levy. NPA's 15% hike in port charges. The 4% administrative charge on free on-board value of imports by the Nigerian Customs Service and the proposed 15% increase in port charges by the Nigerian Ports Authority is not sitting well with many people. The general consensus is that this is ill-timed and should be suspended. Excuse me. The Nigeria Employers Consultative Association, NECA, Manufacturers Association of Nigeria, MAN, and former Senate President Bukola Saraki have all chipped into the conversation. NECA says it is a desperate attempt to meet the government's 10 trillion naira revenue target. MAN, on its part, says it's inconsistent with government's commitment to improve the ease of doing business. And Saraki says Nigerians who are already impoverished will bear the brunt of the policy. You know, when we look at it in general, Dr. Owogarian, send arguments from all these people. You can't fault any of the submissions made here, can you?
First, but let's look at where the Nigeria Customs is coming from. Don't forget that in this year's budget, the National Assembly gave Nigeria Customs a target of about 20 trillion naira. And they must look for a way to generate that money. And I'm sure that is what informs what they are trying to do. But like what every other person said, that task is a sharp departure from the commitment by President Bola Tinubu to create an enabling environment for people to do business in Nigeria. And the ease of doing business, and is consistently saying that the federal government is committed to that. But this task now that they are trying to impose is a clear departure from that. Whether we like it or not, the unintended consequences will be very huge. First, you are going to suffocate the economic environment more, and the cost of things will also go up. And by that, it's likely that some people who are doing business here will close shop, and that will further compound the unemployment in the market. And if you also look at it, it is also contradict the ongoing tax reform by the federal government. So one way you are talking about tax reform, and the other way you are imposing more taxes. I think there's a contradiction there. And rather than imposing more taxes, rather than creating tensions within the economic environment, I think the federal government should find a way to meet with the stakeholders, look for an avenue to increase revenue without necessarily pushing the burden to the investors, both local and foreign investors in our country. But like I said, the unintended consequences is huge.
What time we'll see whether the percentage will be reduced or it will be completely suspended. Yeah. The Punch newspaper this morning, 70,000 naira minimum wage, states salaries raised by or rise by 90% to 3.8 trillion naira. 27 states depend on federal allocation to pay salaries. Plan 6.259 trillion naira IGR. The indications are that at least 27 states will not be able to pay workers' salaries this year without federal allocations from the central government. The increase in wages and spiraling political appointments reflects an increase by nearly 90.23%. This means only 9 out of 36 states governments can independently pay salaries. These states are Lagos, Abia, Benue, Enugu, Ogun, Niger, Kaduna, Kwara, and Osun. Charles, serious state of affairs right here. I think those that are demanding for more states, they need to see this report to see what the implications are for everyone.
As for the issue of more states creation, like I said, the agitators have an agenda, and I don't think it's a good one there. However, talking about the humongous amounts quoted here, there was there's a particular line in the report: spiraling political appointments. I think the finger will also point in that direction, because some of those appointments are just not necessary. I mean, in terms of the amount of work put in and all that. So they may be appointments simply to gratify some people who help someone get into office, and that's just it. And then they go home with humongous amounts of money. And then we're now looking at, an almost 100% increase in the expenditure. But really, I mean, let's take a closer look. Is it just salaries alone? There are different other factors as experienced in some of these states I know about. For instance, the issue of ghost workers, it's never addressed. The wage bill gets bloated unnecessarily and unfairly. So sometimes some of these states actually have to look inwards and check these are sharp practices. It might help in some way. And I also believe that the federal government did not take into consideration so many factors before increasing the wage of the minimum wage across the board that way. And the other thing I am also thinking about is the fact that even though the wage bill has been increased so much, it is still not enough.
Okay, right. Yeah, very well said. Let's move on to Vanguard newspaper. JAPA underfunding, inefficiency, undermining Nigeria's public hospitals. Nigeria is facing a critical shortage of skilled health professionals. Doctor-to-patient ratio has declined to 2,000 against World Health Organization's 1,600. The JAPA, that's mass migration syndrome, also reduced health professionals from 300,000 in 2017 to 90,000 in 2024. The strain is evident across the country, from insufficient bed spaces to outdated equipment and inadequate staffing. I mean, numbers don't lie, they say.
Yes.
From 300,000 to 90,000. That's steep, and it hasn't stopped. This is ongoing. It's clearly alarming, isn't it?
It is definitely alarming. When the CMDs were lamenting just recently at the National Assembly that if we do not do something about remuneration soon, then Nigeria's hospitals will not have doctors and nurses in 2 years. And, some people on social media felt like it was just dramatics.
Talk.
Yeah,
Yes.
It's just talk, but I don't think it's talk. As you said, the numbers are startling. Last year it was reported that 500 doctors had left the National Hospital in just in the last 2 years. And so we're seeing that even from an infrastructure point that it's not strong, from a remuneration point it's not strong. We're seeing they're saying patients have to bring their own generators or inverters, at the UCH. Yes, yeah, exactly. And we're seeing infrastructural problems. At the same time, we're having our Vice President Kashim Shettima say that Nigeria is now a destination for medical tourism because a grand total of 13 people came recently for kidney transplant. This is the same time that we are hearing it's important.
It's not a laughing matter.
I think it's very
this
important.
was choice of words.
Yes, it's true.
It is. No, I think more men go to Turkey for a hair transplant in a 2-hour period from Heathrow Airport, but that's not the point.
Yeah.
When we have structural challenges, we need the people who are in charge of fixing those structural challenges to recognize them and to put in actual solutions to the problem, rather than patting ourselves on the back.
Drastic actions need to be taken.
Definitely.
Measures, immediately. Let's look at The Guardian this morning. IFC invests $50 million in Lagos Free Zone to support Nigeria's industrial growth. The International Finance Corporation says the investment is to support the development and the expansion of Nigeria's first deep-sea port in Lagos Free Zone. The fund will focus on land development, industrial facilities, and logistics infrastructure. When completed, the Lagos Free Zone is expected to create some 30,000 direct, indirect, and induced jobs. Dr. Wugaren, I mean, it seems like a great development. However, we don't need similar activities in other parts of the country or other regions of the country. Lagos is already overstretched, so you need to disperse people, and the way to do that is to make sure that this development is even.
Well, good news, but I think if you also look at the population of Lagos State, we need more of that kind of intervention. It's a good news for Lagos State government. It's a good news for the people of Lagos. We need more of this. I think what the federal government needs to do is to create the enabling environment for this kind of intervention. We just talked about imposing taxes about a few minutes ago. What we need to do is to create the enabling environment, make Nigeria very attractive for this kind of intervention. Because at the end of the day, it is Nigeria that will benefit from it. Yes, I agree that we need to diversify these interventions across the country. But if you also look at the population of Lagos State, Lagos is just like a synopsis of the entire country. Look at the population, look at the facilities, the decaying facilities. So this kind of interventions will solve so many problems there.
All right, on to Daily Independent. At the bottom of the front page, we have one who kills through fake drugs deserves this penalty, according to NAFDAC DG. The Director General of the National Agency for Drug Administration and Control, Professor Mojisola Adeyeye, is calling for the death penalty on those who prioritizing making of money over or at the expense of people's lives. She maintains that only severe penalties will deter people from doing this. She also, cited an example where she said someone who received only 5 years and 250,000 naira fine for importing highly dangerous dose of tramadol, which could cause severe harm to people. So she said, everyone can just import it and just pay this fine since it's very lenient. Serious injury caused to people, Charles. She does have some points here.
The death penalty call may be extreme, but I think that the penalty for importing fake and substandard drugs should actually be a lot harsher. When Dr. Akunyili was the Director General of NAFDAC, when she started this campaign against fake drugs, she received death threats. There were attempts on her life. So it does appear that the people behind this are actually really very vicious, and they'll do anything and go to any lengths to protect this very deadly trade. So I believe that truly they should also be paid back in their own coin. But I actually shy away from the death penalty. I think it's extreme, but life imprisonment wouldn't be a bad idea.
Charles, I have a question, please. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead, please. Yes.
I have a question, Charles. If you think that the death penalty is too much, what about those who are buying these fake drugs, who are relying on daily drugs for their sustenance?
Right.
Do you still believe that this is too much? I hate to say it, but when you have that closer to home and you have someone who is dealing with an ailment that relies on drugs that you need to take to keep you alive, I believe you will have a different perspective.
If I may answer that, Yolanda, I think the death penalty is too simple. I mean, they kill you, 1 second you're gone. Stay in prison for a lifetime and then you will feel it. That's what I believe.
There's also the other angle. When you do import at the ports, there's supposed to be a scrutiny by customs officers. Right. So how do these drugs
Getting
whatever.
There definitely
How did they
is.
get
There's
through
a
the
high
port?
level
So
of
that means
complicity.
there is a responsibility both for the government officials and those that are important at
Absolutely.
this
Very
why,
true.
isn't it? I mean,
Definitely. Now, I will also say that I'm with Charles here, and I don't agree with the death penalty, but not because of the punishment itself, but because of the inequity and injustice in our system. I'm not certain that the right people would actually get punished or, actually get the death penalty. Rather, it might be lower level children probably in poverty being used by very entrenched criminal elements.
Right.
And this corruption that we speak about, definitely you wonder why NDLE or EFCC would be looking at your own bag in the airport. Meanwhile, we have illegal drugs passing through our borders. But also furthermore, if the NAFDAC DG is calling for more stringent punishments when it comes to our laws, there's a process for that. I believe that this is something she should also be discussing with members of the House of Reps committee, or even, the senators, because rather than just saying it or releasing statements or talking to the media, if you want change, then you have to engage the whole process.
All well said. Let's move on to the international headlines. Daily Graphic. We have President John Mahama. He says, don't travel first class. He's given an instruction to his ministers. He actually banned first-class travel for his cabinet ministers and other government officials. There's also a ban on non-essential travel in Ghana today in order to cut government expenditure. He further warned against extravagance. He wants the strictest of accountability and will receive reports from a special committee auditing state resources. Yolanda, well, is the way to go.
It sounds great in theory, but does it translate indeed is the question. It's always great to come out and say all these things, and I'm not disputing whether it's, it has been implemented or not, but I'm just saying that it's one thing to say that, oh, you know what, you should cut down on the spending, cut down on the travel, but is it being followed? Are these things being done? The directive sparked so many discussions on social media lately, and people have been, some have been supportive and some have been expressing skepticism. Yeah. So I don't know what to say on this. Is it translating into action is my question.
Yeah, I was going to say that it reminds me a little bit of when President Tinubu said that the minister convoys will be down to 3, and they released the number of the people who will be traveling with the Vice President and the President and the First Lady for their official trips internationally and domestically. And what we've seen is not necessarily what we were told we will see. Sometimes these cosmetic changes might strike a chord emotionally, but do they do much? If they don't travel first class, they might travel private.
Well, in Ghana, they might actually follow through. It depends, if you give the instructions and you actually follow through. Every country is not Nigeria.
Yeah, the proof is in the pudding.
Yeah, exactly. Let's look at the Citizen newspaper. Trump stirs the honest nest. President Donald Trump's executive order granting Afrikaners refugee status in the U.S. following South Africa's land policy has divided opinion. An analyst, Daniel Siok, says, and I quote, "It's a polarization we certainly needed in South Africa, but it can also destabilize the country in terms of the ability of those who are critiquing the ANC being much vocal now because they think they have Trump's back in Yolanda." Elon Musk and Donald Trump, they are playing the race card here, and South Africans are really, they're fighting over this. They're not agreeing on whether
Sincerely?
this is good, the interference in the country.
Dr. Constance, this is more than interference because he is choosing who he wants to, and he's not even being shy about it. Trump is being Trump in his usual fashion. And this is a little bit scary because these statements have been categorized as being provocative, which they have been. On Friday, after I left the set, I remember seeing a report on some of the orders that were stipulated, and these are executive orders. So I don't know what else to say because political tensions are definitely rising, and Trump is stirring the hornet's nest in more than one place. Look at the tariffs, for example.
Right. Yeah.
China has just come back from the Chinese Lunar New Year, and they're not taking it lightly either.
Yeah.
Okay.
You were going to say
I was going to say that Elon Musk has also called for Julius Malema and the EFF to be declared as international criminals.
Come on.
Malema, in Malema fashion, he did release a statement telling Elon Musk to go to hell. But I think it is, as Yolanda says, it goes beyond interference. It is very scary to see a bigger country try and, you know, bully another country, particularly an African country trying to protect Africans.
He's also doing it to the United Kingdom, so you know he's doing it all over the place, wherever he can get. He thinks because he's a billionaire he can do anything and get away with it.
Let's
look at the Guardian quickly. Let's look at the Guardian quickly. Yes. The Guardian: Britain complicit with war crimes in arms exports, says ex-diplomat. The ex-diplomat Mark Smith, who resigned from the Foreign Office last August, spoke of the last Conservative government and arms sales to Saudi Arabia for use in Yemen. He also said there's no justification for UK's continued arms sales to Israel. I mean, there's a lot he said. You know, there's such a scandalous review that is going on right now, and he thinks that the government is not being scrutinized and the public should know what is happening behind closed doors. I'm afraid we'll have to leave it there. Dr. Iyobosa Owogieran, thank you so much for joining us this morning on the paper review.
Thank you so much, Dr. Constance Ikwoku, for bringing your brilliant analysis as always. And that's all the time we have for you, our wonderful viewers. Today on Daybreak, I am Adesu Agiwa-Osage.
I'm Charles Eruka. It's goodbye from me.
And I'm Yolanda Robert. Please do keep it here on Arise News. The morning show is next. Goodbye.